Hi, folks. Let's talk about kind of the difference of our various sampling methods. So you should have had some notes already writing down definitions of these different sampling methods. So what I want to do is kind of show you in practice what do these differences look like because some of these are very, very similar. So I kind of want to hit on where are they different. So the first one I want to talk about is a random sample. So what I have here is I have, say, a population here. I have some black, blue, and red stick figures just mixed about. So what a random sample is going to do is you're going to have to find some sort of way to randomly select people from the population. So what I did is I assigned every single stick in this population a number from 1 to 22. So what I could do is I could pull numbers from a hat or balls from a hat and just pull numbers at random. The numbers that are picked, they would be part of my sample. Another way you could do this is write down numbers, put them in a hat. I think I said that. You could use a random number generator. There's a lot of random number generators out there that could select random numbers from 1 to 22, whoever's number is picked. So if I use a random number generator, say it selects the number 7. So then what that would mean is this stick figure that was assigned the number 7, he is now in my sample. I pull another random number. I pull the number 2. Well, 2 is now in my sample. Okay. I pull another number. Say I pull the number 16. 16 is now in my sample, so on and so forth. The only thing that would happen is sometimes if you're using a random number generator, let's say I pull the number 7 again. That doesn't mean this person that's represented by number 7 is represented twice. You just probably just draw again. So instead of pulling 7 and saying, hey, you get 2 spots in my sample, you just pull another number again and say you pull 12. That would mean they're involved. So that is a random sample. Another kind of mathematical way of selecting samples is a systematic sample. So you need some sort of rule in how you're going to select your sample. Now, it could come in a wide variety of ways, but there is some sort of rule that you're going to follow this rule to generate your sample. So in the example I'm going to use, I numbered everyone from 1 to 27, and maybe my rule is after I numbered everyone, I'm just going to take all the odd numbers. So essentially every other person. So number 1, you're selected. Number 3, you're selected. Number 5, you're selected. 7, 9, so on and so forth. So some sort of rule that I'm going to use to determine who is picked. It doesn't have to be every other person or odd numbers. It could be every 10th person. So I select the first one, then go another 10, find another one, so on and so forth. So you need some sort of rule. Another sort of sampling method is a self-selecting sample. You'll also hear me or other people kind of describe this as a voluntary sample. The way this works is you have your population and you just basically ask, okay, who wants to be in my sample? And I don't really decide who's in it. The population controls whether they want to participate or not. Some common ways you see this is a lot of times when you go shopping, you might get on your receipt, they say, oh, if you fill out our survey, you're entered in to win some gift card or whatever. It really is a self-selecting sample. You decide whether you want to go home and fill out that survey to determine if you want to give your information. So I don't control who's in the sample. You get to determine yourself, hence the name self-selecting. So maybe, these people over here are going to fill out my survey. These guys, these guys, these guys. They choose whether they want to be in the sample or not. They volunteer themselves. Okay, our next two are a little bit tougher, and I might spend a little bit more time here. So cluster sampling and a stratified sample. They're very, very similar, but I'll talk about the ways that they're similar, and then we'll talk about the ways that they are different. So the way that both cluster samples and stratified samples work is the first thing you need to do is break up your population into groups. Now, commonly, these groups are going to have a common characteristic. Another name for these groups is clusters, hence the name cluster samples. So what I did, and the similarities between these two is I put black stick figures together, red stick figures, and blue. Blacks, reds, and blue stick figures all together. That's just an easy way for me to show, okay, they have a common characteristic. It could be a wide range of things. I could put freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors together, whatever, okay? So that's how they're both similar. They're both about breaking up into groups. Here's where they're different. So what a cluster sample is going to do is now that you have all of your groups, it could be more than 3 groups, could be a whole large amount of groups. You could assign numbers to them. This is group number 1, this is group number 2, and this is group number 3. Now what we're going to do is we're going to randomly select a group. So that would be using like a random number generator or pulling a number from a hat or something like that. And let's say I pulled the number 3. What that means in a cluster sample is every single person that is in group 3 is now part of my sample. So when you select a group, you take the entire sample for a cluster sample, okay? I don't need to pull just one cluster. If I had like 10 different groups, maybe I pull another number. The next number I pull is 7. Then everyone in group number 7, you're also included with everyone in group number 3. So the difference is cluster samples break up into groups. Entire groups are randomly selected. So the entire group is included. So here's how a stratified sample is a bit different. In a stratified sample, yes, you still are breaking up into groups, but what you're going to do is you're going to go to every single group and randomly select a few participants or subjects from every single group. So what I did is with my black stick figures, I numbered them 1 to 7. So what I would do is inside this group, I would pull random numbers. Let's say I pulled 2, so he is selected or she is selected. I pulled 5, they are selected as well. And then I pulled 4. So 2, 4, and 5 from this group are going to be part of my greater sample. Then I move on to the next group. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to randomly pull numbers to randomly pull people from this one group. So let's say I pull the random numbers 1, 2, and 6. So the 3 that I pulled from here, along with the 3 here, so far are my entire sample. Then I go to the next group. I'm going to randomly select a few participants from my blue stick figures. So I use a random number generator. It generates the numbers 4, 3, and 7. So 4, 3, and 7 are all going to be included. So I take the random people selected from the first group, plus the random people selected from the second group, plus the random people selected from the third group, and all together they're going to make my greater sample. Okay, so a cluster sample is going to still break up into groups, but take the entire group. A stratified sample breaks up into groups as well, but you take a random sample inside of every single group. Okay, so these are very, very tough to kind of tell the difference between. The third one we're going to talk about is a convenience sample. Okay, so this is the way I think about this and how students can relate is it's just like how you guys want to get your homework done. You want to get it done as quickly as possible, as easily as possible is what a lot of students do. So for a convenience sample, I'm going to make it very convenient for me. So maybe if I'm going to do a convenient sample, I need a sample of 5 people. Well, the first 5 people I run into, you're going to be part of my sample. I'm not going to try and do groups and cluster or random sampling. I'm not going to do a simple random sample. I'm just going to try and get this done. That is a convenience sample. So that's kind of the fundamentals on how each of these types of sampling methods work. The reason you might see differences there is convenience sample is all about easiness of doing it, trying to get to the easiest sample as quickly as possible. A stratified sample is really nice to try and hit certain groups and make sure your overall sample is very well represented. So we get a few from every single group. So with a stratified sample, you might look at, if I'm trying to figure out something between freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, I want to make sure the freshmen are represented, the sophomores, the juniors, and the seniors are all represented. With a cluster sample, you might recognize that groups are important and breaking the population up into groups is important, but you're just going to take an entire group and see how that entire group is doing with a cluster sample. Self-selecting sample, again, it's really an ease of access sample. You're going to ask the question to everyone, but at the end of the day, people control whether they're going to do it or not. So this is very, very commonly used today. It's not super great because only people that actually care are probably going to fill it out. If you're going shopping at a store, they're say like Taco Bell or whatever, like, hey, please fill out the survey. You probably don't care. You're not going to fill it out unless you're just loving Taco Bell and you absolutely want to fill it out, so it's not super great. Systematic samples, not too bad. It's just a very ordered way in which you're doing things, and try and keep yourself organized. The most common one is a random sample there. If you do it correctly and you make sure your sample's big enough, you should get a very fair representation. Your sample should kind of match up with your population and kind of how diverse it is. So a random sample is extremely common. So there's a time and place for every single type of sample. We just need to understand what the differences between all of them are. So that was kind of the difference in all of the sampling methods.